And we are live. Thank you so much for joining us another week in my amazing group, my amazing community, the Riviera Maya real estate community. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, as every week, I like to see this community growing more and more. We are already more than 160 members. And thank you so much for your trust. And thank you so much for following this community and being part of this. This week, we have an amazing and very interesting topic for you that going to cover the IRA investment. For those of you who are new to this group and haven't watched the previous lives that I already did, I suggest you to go and click on the features. There is a tab called features, and there you will find all the previous lives that we did that can help you as an investors or as owners to make a smarter decision before invest, before buying, before being an owner here in Mexico. And I think that can make a lot of sense. We're gonna wait a few more minutes to see if somebody is joining us. And in the meantime, I'm gonna present my guest for this week, Charles Tibshirani. No, wait, it's Tibshirani. I have it. Tibshirani. That's the right name. And I'm going to present the subject for this week. I brought a very interesting subject for you guys, the American ones that wants to invest and find maybe a problem with their capital and they want to increase their capital. This is a very creative way to increase your capital, and that's what Charles is gonna explain us today. And Charles is gonna take us step by step, hand by hand, and teach us and show us this process. So thank you so much, Charles, for joining us. How are you?
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, this is my pleasure. So Charles, if you can please present yourself, explaining us a bit about your experience in general in the real estate, in legal assistance for real estate. What do you do today, please?
Well, I'm a licensed Canadian attorney. I've been practicing 35 years, most of it in international law. And 9 years ago, I founded Mexlaw in Mexico with some colleagues. Today, Mexlaw is 74 lawyers in 5 cities across Mexico. We mostly focus on real estate transactions for foreigners, and we've acquired a certain ability and expertise in the area. And because we are an international law firm, we are subject to bar rules and rules of ethics. So our behavior, our conduct is extremely ethical and regulated. So we give high quality professional services, mostly to foreigners that want to purchase real estate in Mexico. But we also offer commercial, corporate law, criminal law. We have a department for litigation. We have an 8-man team, 8-person team in litigation as well.
Thank you so much for presenting you. Welcome. And also Mexlaw. For those of you that are new to this business, Mexlaw is one of the biggest companies that gives us, the realtors, or you as buyers, as investors, the backup, the consultant that you want, and they will represent you and only you. And this is something that I always like to say to my clients. When you are hiring a lawyer, this lawyer, it's not representing us as a team, represent you as a client and only you. And this is something that is very, very important. We already covered this issue, why you need a lawyer in this transaction. So let's talk about IRA. This is why we are here today. What is our IRA? In general, if you can help us understand.
It's an individual retirement account. It's a fiction of law, if you want, that the only Americans have, by the way, whereby they can place their pension fund in this self-directed account, and they could basically invest in certain assets. Not everything, but there are certain limits, and there's our excluded assets that they cannot invest in. The object of the IRA is to increase your pension fund so that when the time comes for you to retire, you have enough money to cover your day-to-day expenses. However, you do the management, you manage those funds. If you have a 401k or you have a different kind of pension vehicle, there are professionals that invest it for you. With the IRA, you can self-direct. You can decide what property you will be buying.
Okay. So if as any fund, and we all know this, that you cannot withdraw your funds at any point. I'm sure that the IRA, it's the same situation. Can you withdraw at any
Correct.
point?
No,
Is there any?
you cannot. Well, you can. Like, technically, you can, but you pay income tax. It's like withdrawing funds, and you have to report it to the IRS in the year that you withdrew it. But you pay income tax, and sometimes you pay penalties because you have accumulated taxes on this amount. In certain circumstances, which doesn't deal with this topic, the IRS will allow you to withdraw funds and to pay forward your taxes in the next year, for emergency health or issues of that nature. But if you do withdraw funds from the IRA, you will be taxed.
Okay. So you can do this at any point, but it will be smart to wait until this exit point to reduce the penalties or the taxes.
Correct. That's the purpose of the fund, is to let your nest egg grow.
Of course. So let's do the link between the IRA and the property here in Mexico.
Sure.
Can you buy any property and use those funds?
Any property.
Any property.
It could be a house.
Pre-sale.
It could be a condominium. You cannot buy commercial property. I should mention it. I'm talking about residential property. It's not considered as a secondary home. It's considered as investment property. That's a key criteria for it to be an eligible investment. As a matter of fact, the beneficiary of the IRA and his family, his immediate family, cannot benefit. They can't. A lot of people at the beginning think that they could buy a property with IRA funds and vacation 2 weeks a year. They say, "Oh, what's the harm?" Legally, no, you cannot. Some people do, but legally, you cannot. This property is the purpose of this property is to be rented, to generate income tax-free. That's the key here, is that the income will be tax-free. Capital gains, there's no capital gains in the US when you sell that property. You can even get an exemption of capital gains in Mexico if it's an IRA, if it's a pension fund.
Okay, I'm actually taking notes, so thank you so much. So what do I need to do? If I have my IRA, what do I need to do before I want to use my IRA and apply it?
Okay. Now, assuming you have your IRA, I'm not going to get into how to create one because that's another chapter that needs to be addressed independently. Assuming you have your IRA, you have your funds are available in your IRA. There's a lot of questions that some of your listeners may ask me. Can I borrow money and have enough funds to buy my property? But let's assume you have the money you need in your IRA funds. The first thing you need to do is to identify a property. Find a property that you want to buy. Go through the process with you, Hagar, for example. Make the offer, negotiate the price, make the deal. When comes the time to finalize and accept an offer, you have to specify to your seller, who could be a developer or could be an individual, that this money is coming from an IRA. Why? Number one, they have to understand it's going to take a little longer than normal. Most transactions in Mexico with foreigners buying real estate can take 6 to 8 weeks to close, sometimes more if there's complications in the creation of the bank trust, in providing the necessary title deeds. We do all that for you. Mexlaw takes care of all that. But in the IRA, it's a little more complicated because it's from documents need to be certified in the US. They need to be apostille. In other words, they need to be recognized by the American government, sent to Mexico, translated into Spanish by an official translator. So I would add minimum 3 weeks to an IRA transaction. So when comes the time for you to, so you should mention that in your offer. When you're making an offer, specify, I will need additional time to close because the funds are coming from my pension fund. And believe me, when we started doing this business 8 years ago, my partner and I, nobody knew what an IRA was. Today, a lot of developers, a lot of real estate agents, they're familiar with it. They know that it's a pension fund. They know that the funds have to transit from the US. The documentation is more complicated than a normal real estate transaction. So that's the number one suggestion that I recommend. I tell all realtors that take this course, by the way, we give a course at Mexlaw to realtors concerning IRA. Give yourself a little more time. Then what happens is that you will follow the same process as if you were buying real estate in Mexico without the IRA. You know by now, if you are shopping for real estate in Mexico, that foreigners cannot buy real estate directly. They need to create a bank trust. And there's a process to create a bank trust. They need to go get a license from External Affairs, a permit, and they need to register the trust. The bank has to create the trust. The notary has to, there's a lot of documentation required. The only difference with an IRA is that when the time comes for you to sign or to create the trust, it has to be identified as an IRA. You have to mention, I'm buying Charles Tibshirani, for example, but it's my IRA that is funding it. So that's another example, another item that you need to take into consideration. The second item is most bank trusts are basically simple and they're pretty idiotic. They're just basically a deed, and they say the bank buys for you, lends you its name, blah, 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 blah. It's your property. You're the beneficiary. You can rent, buy, sell. You can do whatever you want with this property, but the bank lends you its name. The only difference with an IRA is that in the deed itself, there are particular terminology that needs to be used because at one point, your custodian who is controlling your fund in the US or the IRS want to see this deed. Do you have a clause stipulating that this property cannot be occupied by the beneficiary of the IRA and his family? These are the little details that you need to pay attention to. May not be necessary, but you'll be thankful they are there if ever you're audited, if ever your custodian questions the transactions, has to file reports to the IRS. So those are basically the three key elements of when you're buying a property with an IRA.
Okay, so I have a question.
Yes.
I'm buying with an IRA. Can I use this property for my 2 weeks getaway? No.
Nope.
It's only as an investment. Only as an investment.
There's a trick to that. There's a small loophole. And the loophole is that, I don't know if I should say this on camera, but a lot of my clients buy with an IRA, have it managed by a property manager for them in Mexico. And what they do is they get the property manager to lend them another unit in the same building that they're managing in compensation for 2 weeks of rental. So we really haven't tested that theory. I'm just telling you what some people do, but the rule is you and your immediate family are excluded individuals. You cannot use that property.
Mm-hmm. Another question. So let's say I want to purchase with my IRA, but I only want to pay, and I'm doing a pre-sale. I'm buying something still under construction. I only want to use it towards my down payment. And then the rest, I'm going to use my funds. Can I divide those funds only towards the down payment?
You could divide those funds, but what you have to do is you have to contribute. If you want, the idea is to get tax-free income and tax-free, tax excluded capital gains at the end when you sell it. But if you want to do that, then you'll have to find some kind of an arrangement with the developer to segregate those funds. So you can buy the property and you can have your IRA and somebody else as a partner in the IRA, not you personally, because you can borrow against that property. but you cannot add funds, your own personal funds, because what you're doing is you're doing something indirectly that you can't do directly. You cannot just add to your IRA any amount of money. There's a specific equation that you need to establish when it comes time to invest in your IRA, and it's a percentage of your income for the current year, the taxation year. And that's the amount that you can contribute to the IRA. You just can't, funnel money in it as you wish. So you need to find the funds from somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You cannot personally buy the property. Sorry,
but it needs to be for myself. It's not like a gift to my son. It has to be to myself.
No. What I'm saying is, assuming you do not have enough funds to purchase the property directly, the entire property, right? You could use a portion of your IRA or your IRA, and you can get the money from somebody else. Someone else can lend you the money. You can arrange something with that person, but someone else has to lend you the money. There are conditions to that loan. There are very specific conditions. It's called a non-recourse loan. We can get into that whenever you want to proceed further, because you need to be able to borrow the money, show where the money came from, show the deed of loan to demonstrate that it meets all the conditions of an IRA loan. And yes, that way you could buy the property.
Okay. Let's talk a bit about costs. We all know that closing cost as it is will cost to a buyer, let's say averagely 8% out of the buying, between 8 and 9, correct?
Correct.
Doing this with the IRA, how much we're talking? We're still inside of the 8%?
Yes, we are. Because the only difference with that is that the paperwork is going to be the additional cost. Everything else is the same. The taxes to the city, the notary fees, the legal fees for Mexlaw, everything else is the same. It's as though you were buying the property without an IRA. The only additional cost is to get all this documentation and backup. So you need to get documents apostilled in the U.S. You need to get documents translated, certified in Mexico. I would add maybe another $600 to $700 more or less, más o menos, as we say here, to be able to close on an IRA transaction.
Okay, that's not bad.
No,
that's not bad. So we are talking additionally $600 or $700
compared to a regular real estate,
maybe 3 to 6 weeks. Let's talk about 3 or 6 weeks more.
Yes.
Okay, this is really, really not bad.
No,
we are still inside of the closing cost, average cost, and we're still inside a very good window of around 3 months. Let's say between 2 and 3 months total for closing. But anyway, it's very reasonable. Okay, that's very good to know. So we spoke about timing. We spoke about time. What about selling it? Now it's time for me to flip it. I want to sell it. Let's talk about all this process of selling this after I already purchased it.
Now, when you sell it, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, because the funds go back to the U.S. That's all. You will sell it like you would a a trust property in Mexico held by a foreigner. You get the okay from the trust company that says that you paid them up to date what you owe them. You go to Mexlaw, we get a notary, the notary prepares the transaction, the funds can be held in escrow, or the funds can be repatriated directly to your account in the US. And that's it. In the US, you will not be taxed. There's no capital gain. You will report the sale of the property in an IRA fund. There's no capital gains whatsoever in the US. In Mexico, there may possibly be a little IRA. When I say a little, is because the Mexican government treats investment property by foreigners, even when it's not an IRA, differently. You can get an exemption, a credit of up to 3 million pesos per person, not to pay tax. So the first 3 million in gain is not taxable. If you are 2 on the trust, like you and your spouse, or for example, you have 6 million. Each owner which is a foreigner, under certain conditions, can get an exemption of 3 million pesos. That's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Okay.
one way for you to avoid,
That
paying taxes in Mexico. I'm just checking what that were represented. Go ahead.
we had a few weeks ago an investor who came here and gave us his best tips about flipping. And he spoke about this situation that you flip it before you close it, that we call it
Yes.
here cesión de derechos or transferring the
Yes.
rights. Can
Correct.
that be applicable? Can that be applicable also? No, because you need the deed. You need the deed.
You
Okay.
cannot, but you need to notarize the deed. And once a deed is notarized or once the sale is concluded, funds come from your account in the US to the seller, whether it's a developer, whether it's an individual. And when you sell, those funds, after you paid all your expenses, need to go back to your account in the US. Most IRAs are held in a bank account. You have a bank account with any bank, in Citibank, whatever, and the funds are in that account for the IRA.
Okay. Now, any lawyer in Mexlaw can help my buyers do this, or there are certain
No.
lawyers that are specialized?
Yes. We have 3 lawyers in Mexlaw that is focusing on this area of sales, this type of sales. When you contact Mexlaw, you specify, I'm buying property, I'm interested, I need an estimate of closing costs. By the way, it's with an IRA. The customer service representative that receives that request will immediately assign it to one of those 3 lawyers. And they're familiar with the process. They know how to contact your custodian, get the right documents, build the file. Again, the other thing that's interesting is not very many notaries in Mexico understand the concept of buying property with an IRA. So we need to use very specific notaries that we spent months convincing that it can be done, So we had notaries telling us, no, it doesn't exist, it's impossible. So we need to use very specific lawyers at Mexlaw and specific notaries who are familiar with the process. They're not going to raise any red flags or their eyebrows and say, what? How can I? It has to be you, no third party.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk about the seller as a developer or as an individual seller. Is there anything different for the seller side to receive the funds? It's just a wire transfer, exactly the same.
He doesn't care, he cares where the money comes from. It has to be legitimate source and everything like that, but he doesn't care. You as the owner, for you to have the property classified as an IRA investment, eligible investment, you have to have all your paperwork in order. In the year that you purchase the real estate, you have nothing to do other than to conclude the transaction. In your taxation year, when it comes time for you to file your tax return in the US, you need to provide the supporting document or have it available, actually. You don't need to provide it. Some custodians require that you provide it to them as well. They keep a copy, a record of the transaction in case they are verified as custodians. Are they monitoring this transaction? Are they monitoring their accounts? So, and that's when you want to be sure that you have everything in order, that there's nothing missing. There's a paragraph or a document that's not in order. So that's it. Other than that, the seller doesn't care. He just gets paid. He signs the notarial deed. You as the buyer have to make sure that you comply with the law, the IRA required laws.
Of course. Okay, I think that we covered all this process.
Yes.
I think that I don't have any questions, and I see that at the moment we don't have any viewers. But if some of you are still watching us on the replay, and you have questions, so Charles is part of this group. You can comment below if you have more questions. I really try to cover all of this and ask questions that I think that will make sense to you. But if I missed something, comment below this live, and Charles is part of this group and he can answer and reach out directly. And
Sure.
if you want to work with Mexlaw, for sure, we can do the match between the two of you, with the client and Mexlaw. I've been working with Mexlaw many times, and I love working with Mexlaw. And other the fact that they are the only law firm here in this area that actually do the IRA, all this transaction can be also very helpful.
Of course,
So
and
Charles,
most of your guests can write to us, ask for me, and I will respond. And some guests, some buyers normally, before they even proceed, before they make an offer, want to make sure that they have all the details and the minute details. Don't hesitate, write to me. I'll be in my pleasure to respond to your email, and I'll let you know exactly what I'll answer your questions. And if we can help, of course, we'll be ready to do so when you're ready to proceed further with your purchase.
Okay, and we do have a question, and somebody is asking us. Let's see if I can see who is asking us. I don't see the name. Just a minute. We have a question. I don't know, Charles, if you can see on your right side of the screen, it says, I have a question. Does it work the same way with the 401k account?
No. The 401k is the starter account. Normally what you do is you roll over your 401k to an IRA, a self-directed IRA. So once it's transferred over, you create your IRA account, you transfer your 401k. It could be done in the same year. A lot of custodians help you with all the paperwork. It's very simple. You can do it online. You open your bank account in the name of your IRA, transfer the cash from your 401k. Once it's registered and they give you the green light, this does not work with a 401k. It's only a self-directed IRA. Can you do this transaction?
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't see who is asking the questions.
It's okay.
But I think it's one of my buyers.
One of your what?
One of my buyers. She already invested with me. Yes, and yeah, I can see that it's Rokia Takora. Yes. Charles, I think that we covered everything. But anyway, if some of you have more questions, so please feel free to comment below, and we will monitoring this live for the next weeks, months, until we cover all your questions. Thank you so much for jumping and be our guest and be part of this community. Stay tuned for something that's going to come next. Every week we are going live and bringing so much information for buyers that can make sense to everyone to invest in Mexico. Charles, thank you so much for your time and for this precious information. It was very helpful.
Thank you.
If you want
Thank
to
you for having me. No, thank you for
that
having
was
me. I look forward to working with you in the future, Agar.
Of course. Thank you so much. Enjoy your evening. Thank you for being part of my community.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.